Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. We have a guest today. Andrew from Liberty Blue Podcast is going to join us to discuss some Rangers hockey. Andrew, welcome aboard.
Appreciate you having me, man. Appreciate you reaching out.
Definitely. There has been a lot to discuss and ponder as far as this Rangers season. It was a good one. The 2023-2024 campaign, unfortunately, ends a little bit sooner than we would have wanted it to with their 6-game series loss to the Florida Panthers. Wanted to just get a feel for where you're at with, the past season that was and moving forward into this offseason.
I mean, it was a good year in terms of them getting to the conference finals, taking the Panthers to 6. If you want to look at it from a glass half full approach, they made it to the conference finals again, which some franchises would love one opportunity at, and the Rangers made it, for the second time in 3 years. So from that perspective, it was a good season. But you take a look at the road to the conference finals and who they would have played in the final had they beaten Florida. This was the best chance that the Rangers had of winning the Stanley Cup in the past 30 seasons. This was it. You take a look at they beat a Capitals team that wasn't supposed to be there. They were happy to be there. The Rangers really didn't play that well against Washington, and they didn't need to because Washington just wasn't good. And the Rangers saw that. They took advantage of them. They swept them, and then they moved on to Carolina, where they nearly blew a 3-0 series lead, but thank you to Christopher Kreider, who had an absolutely historic third period, said, that's not happening on my watch. And also, thank you to Freddie Anderson for falling and just not doing his job. I don't know what he was doing in that game, but thank you to him as well. And then the Rangers got to Florida, and they were beaten badly. Like it was a close series in terms of the scoreline, but Florida had the better of the chances. The power play for the Rangers was non-existent. Some of that was the Florida penalty kill that did a good job, but Adam Fox was on one leg, and there was no adjustment to change any of that. One of the most dynamic, one of the reasons the Rangers are so dynamic on the power play is because of their movement. You don't really know what to expect when you're on the penalty kill against that because they're always moving. They're always changing up their lines of sight. When Adam Fox could no longer move, everybody froze. And that's when the power play started to force these cross-ice passes that were read every time, and they went nowhere. I did not like that the Rangers didn't really change anything on the power play. It wasn't working. They didn't put Lafreniere on the first power play unit. He was white hot the entire playoffs. He should have had an opportunity. Get Gustafsson to quarterback the power play. Get Zach Jones in there and put him on the second power play unit. Some kind of adjustment needed to be made, and there wasn't. And I wasn't a fan of that. But this was the best chance. You take a look at how the Rangers would have matched up against the Oilers. I mean, Florida is showing everybody that why they're the best team in the league. But if the Rangers were to beat them, they would have matched up really well against this team, and they let it fall through their fingers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying, and it had that special feeling during the regular season. The ways they were winning games, the comeback nature within what they were doing. And yeah, it definitely felt like of all years. And look, you can go back to, of course, 2014, 2015, where they were close, very close. But this one, you only get so many chances. And so where I think the Rangers, the future is still there, the window is still very much intact. There's definitely going to be some changes that need to be made. Now, like you said, with the special teams, it's kind of imperative for the Rangers to win the special teams battle in order to win. Their 5-on-5 play is middling, I think would be a fair way to put it. And the penalty kill was very, very good, not only in terms of goal prevention, but in terms of even offensive opportunity. I think that Zibanejad and Kreider, they got their best chances shorthanded. But even that kind of faltered just a little bit. Panthers had 5 power play goals. I think it was 5 for 19, if I remember correctly. And the Rangers were just not able to do enough, like you said, in the power play. Adam Fox getting hurt was definitely problematic. And it seemed like he had recovered from that Sebastian Aho injury in the season, where it took him some time, but then he was the Fox that we're used to. But then the Jensen knee on knee happens, and he just wasn't quite the same. Like you said, which is a good point. The Carolina series, they really almost did come close to blowing a 3-0 lead until Chris Kreider decided to go into beast mode in the third period. And Freddie Anderson definitely did let up a couple of weak goals. So as good as things were trending in the wrong direction. And like you said, also with Alexis Lafreniere, I understand why with it's all about stability and the 5-man unit being used to each other. So I didn't expect as much as I wanted it. I wanted Lafreniere to be in the number one unit. For better or worse, you kind of knew it wasn't going to happen. But what happens in this offseason? Is there a chance that maybe Lafreniere does get more ice time for the 2024-2025 season, and mainly included that first power play unit?
I would think so. I would hope so. He looked outstanding for the better part of the season. He was on a different planet throughout the playoffs. So I would think after Laviolette has, watched him kind of blossom into who the Rangers thought he would be when they first drafted him, then I do think he's going to get more opportunities and more ice time and more of a leash to kind of just do whatever he wants out there on the ice. It's just a matter of what the Rangers are going to do with that first line, because we saw it last year where the Rangers traded for Tarasenko, which by all means was a good trade, because one, Tarasenko was a good player, but two, they traded an Arby's coupon to get him. They didn't give up anything to acquire him, but they also went for the name brand Patrick Kane, who was on one hip. He couldn't skate. They traded for their resume instead of what he could do for this team now. And that's a massive problem when you're a general manager of a hockey team. You have to look at everybody that you're trading for, and the resume is great. The cups are great. Everything is fantastic. Can they do it now? Can they skate now? Can they help the offense create opportunities at 5-on-5 now? I don't care what they did 10 years ago, 5 years ago. That doesn't matter to me. Can they do it now? Chris Drury did not think about that, traded for Patrick Kane, and then they got embarrassed in the first round. So the Rangers now, in this trade deadline, did the complete 180 of trading for Alex Wennberg, which did his job on the third line. I have no complaints about Alex Wennberg. But they traded for Jack Roslovic, who was not a first-line guy. And they stuck him up there and said, figure it out. And it didn't work. Obviously, it didn't work because he was not a first-line guy who wasn't going to magically figure out how to play first-line minutes with Kreider and Zibanejad, two guys who notoriously cannot score at 5-on-5. Jack Roslovic was not the guy that was going to fix that line. He was never the guy to fix that line. But for some reason, that's who the Rangers went after, and that was kind of it. I know initially they wanted Pacioretty for that first line spot, which also doesn't make any sense to me because he's 37 and barely holding on. Like, he's had a great career and I have a lot of respect for him, but could Pacioretty have done better than Jack Roslovic in 2024 on the first line? The answer to that is no. So I just don't know what the vision is for this team if you're Chris Drury, because he went all in 2022, traded for a guy who couldn't skate, and he was a cherry picker to the extreme, got embarrassed, and now in this trade deadline, you get Wennberg, great player for his role. You get Chad Ruhwedel for defensive insurance, never played. Also, you had Zach Jones, never played him for some reason. I'm baffled at that decision. And then you trade for Jack Roslovic, who could have helped this team, again, in like a third line role and a depth offensive potential kind of player. He was never a first line player. So the Rangers knew they had the entire season. They put Blake Wheeler there. They put Jimmy Vesey there. They knew that, okay, everybody just hold on until the trade deadline. Reinforcements are coming. Just stick anybody there. It doesn't matter. Sign me off those street. Just put somebody there until the deadline, and we'll get somebody that can play with the top guys. And Chris Drury ended up not doing that, which baffles. I don't know what the end game for that was. I understand that Jake Gensel, who ended up going to Carolina, maybe Pittsburgh didn't want to trade him to the Rangers at all. Maybe they wanted the key to the city, and Chris Drury said no. I don't know. I'm sure there were other conversations. I'm not in the room with Chris, so I have no idea. But it seemed like for the opportunity that they had, that Roslovic was not enough. Wenberg was good for what he was doing, but Roslovic was not enough, and they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of those thoughts. So going back to last year's 2023 deadline, not only do you get Tarasenko, but you get Nico Mikkola as well, which I thought was a good piece to get. And we've seen what he's done with the Florida Panthers in even a bigger role in the top four. So that trade by itself, totally fine with that. But yeah, but going to Patrick Kane, it was taking it way too far as they wanted a big name. I'm not sure how much Jim Dolan was an influence on this. Not to take Drury off the hook, but you just wonder. And
Sather's still there too.
Exactly.
We can't forget that.
Exactly. And I don't love that either. And I think they were trying to somehow find the same blueprint as they did in 2022. And again, these aren't exact comparables, but Andrew Kopp being the Alex Wenberg. Now, granted, Kopp had more of an offensive role and moved over to the wing where Strome, if I remember correctly, was still the center on that line with Panarin. And obviously, Roslovic's game is different than Frank Vetrano. Vetrano more of a shoot first guy. Roslovic more of a passing vision type of guy. But clearly, it didn't work out. And again, it's not Roslovic's fault. It's not a role that he should have been in. The interesting thing about Gensel, I felt like the package that was required to get Gensel was not as much as I would have thought. So it does make you wonder if maybe they did want to trade him to the Rangers. Granted, Carolina's in the division as well. What I'll also say is this, so even with Jake Gensel, I still, as much as I think that it would have been sensible to go for it and push, put your chips, right into the table, knowing that this team has a chance to win the cup. I don't even know if they would have beaten the Panthers with Gensel. We'll never know. Certainly it would have been better than Roslovic.
I think it would have been closer.
It definitely would have been closer, and Gensel has been notoriously a Ranger killer.
All they needed was a couple of goals. Like, for how poorly the Rangers played for a lot of that series, all they needed was a couple of goals. Jake Gensel gets one power play goal, and he gets one 5-on-5 goal, and we could be talking about the Rangers in the final. Despite the Florida Panthers having their way throughout a lot of that series, the scoreline was extremely close. All they needed was a bounce, a shot to go their way, and the Rangers could be up, we will obviously will never know, but it could be the Rangers up 2-0 in the series against Edmonton and not Florida. So if the margins are that close, Jake Gensel would have helped.
Agreed. He definitely would have helped. I think what they were, and again, I'm not saying I agree with this, I think from their mindset, they really didn't want to break up that number one power play unit at all. And Jake Gensel, if he were on the team, would have had to have been inserted. Sure, maybe you could have gone some different way and had Lafreniere and Gensel on second power play unit and taken some ice time away from the number one unit, but they just didn't want to disturb that. But I don't think that they don't deserve that anymore. And so this goes into a conversation. I'm going to shift over to the defense, but it also kind of goes more to the leadership core of this team and the idea of if you can even break it up. So you bring up the fact the Rangers were very close, and they were. And things that come to mind to me is being up 2-1 in the series, game 4. They didn't play well, but it was tied late. And you go into overtime, and Mika Zibanejad turns the puck over, puts Blake Wheeler in a tough spot. Personally, great story with Wheeler. I would have preferred to just stay away from that. I understand VZ was hurt and the options were slim. And then on that power play, Jacob Trouba goes just way out of position, which he does regularly.
Loves to do that. Big fan of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that brings up the point. You brought up Zach Jones before, and I understand that in the playoffs, you'd prefer to have big body defensemen, but they really, really need a good puck moving D-man. They really do lack that. Obviously, you have Adam Fox, who was compromised, and I would like Zach Jones to get an opportunity. Logically, you would think that Eric Gustafsson probably goes elsewhere for a number of different reasons. I thought he did a nice job, but in terms of what he's going to be looking to make, I don't know that they're going to be able to afford that. Maybe they'll circle back on Gustafsson, but I think Zach Jones probably fits into that spot. But for me, if there's any way to get Jacob Trouba off this roster, it would be addition by subtraction.
I mean, yeah, I absolutely agree. I have screamed so much about Jacob Trouba in the 100+ episodes of Liberty Blue that Nick and I have done. It's just one of those situations where the Rangers traded for somebody they thought was going to be that 50-point power play quarterback that was in Winnipeg. And then as soon as he got here, he forgot how to play offense, but he was never a good defensive player either. So they got the same defensive player who, for some reason, now can't score. And they paid him $8 million to do it. And they gave him the captaincy, a role that he clearly does not like. I know the team gave it to him. I understand that. But like at a certain point, the captain has to be one of the best players on the team. Has to be. And Jacob Trouba is a sixth defenseman on this team, making $8 million a year. I tweeted this out, a few weeks ago. He gets paid $8 million to throw helmets, elbows, and games. That's what he's there for. He can't defend. All he does is, he goes in for these hits. He puts himself way out of position for no reason. He's not a sensible player when it comes to defending the rush, defending the play. He's not a fast player either, so he gets beaten on the rush more times than not by a wide margin. And he doesn't defend the front of the net well either. So, okay, and on top of that, he takes a lot of penalties. So, why is he making $8 million? Why does he have the captaincy role? And again, I'm whenever I say negative things about players on the team, I wanna make it clear that I'm talking about the person on the ice. I'm not talking about Jacob Trouba off the ice. I'm sure he's a great person. I'm sure he's a great leader. I'm sure he's a lot of great things, and I don't want to take away from that. I'm talking strictly about his on-ice production, and it is abysmal. It just is. Regardless of, even if you're the biggest Trouba fanboy that loves his elbow hits, that loves his chicken wing, I'm gonna try to kill you type of plays. If you love that #grit, #sandpaper type leadership that he brings, that's all fine and dandy. He doesn't help you win hockey games. I don't care how much grit he has. I don't care how many hits he has. He does not provide winning defense. When he defends, the other team has a ball. The Florida put out their best players against him all the time. So did Carolina. Everybody in the NHL knows when Jacob Trouba is on the ice, you can send your best guys out there because he can't catch up to them. And even if he does, he's just going to go in for a hit. So just get out of the way.
Definitely. So the thing with Trouba is, you notice when the puck is in the defensive zone for the Rangers, chances are Jacob Trouba's on the ice. And this isn't a fair comparison, Mike, but when Adam Fox is on the ice and his 100% self, usually the puck tends to be in the offensive zone for the Rangers. So you bring up a lot of very good points as far as Trouba is concerned. And his role has always been way too much on this team. Now, when he first came here, now keep in mind at that point, Adam Fox was a rookie, and Tony DeAngelo was a young player. But opening night, I was actually at opening night. It was ironically versus the Winnipeg Jets. And Trouba was on the number one power play unit. And it's funny, he actually wired like a really nice slap shot goal. And it was like, that was not a sign of things to come for Trouba offensively. I mean, that's just not a part of his game.
He should have bought a lottery ticket because he missed the next 75 slap shots that he took. They all went 9 feet wide.
Exactly. That's his special, or he'll just do the little soft wrist shot to end any sort of possession that they have. He'll just put it right to the goalie. But yeah, the contract is really bad. Like you said, his offensive skills are completely eroded. It was funny. Something came up on social media that I had forgotten about, I guess, in what would have been his last playoffs with Winnipeg. It was the Blues versus the Winnipeg Jets, game 5, series tied at 2, and with like 20, 30 seconds left, Trouba is trying to just keep the puck behind the net to force overtime, and the Blues steal it from him. Then he's out of position, and they score the game-winning goal, and then the Blues would win Game 6 and eventually win the Stanley Cup. But Trouba, to give him the captaincy as well when it was done, and my opinion at the time was, I didn't mind rolling with the A's. I understand that you do need a captain, I guess, but they were coming off a successful season. And to me, Jacob Trouba single-handedly turned the tide in that Lightning series. The Rangers were up 2-0 in game 3 versus the Lightning, up 2-0 in the series. And I want to say he took at least 2 or 3 penalties and had a really bad turnover that either led to a penalty or a goal. Like I cannot get that out of my head. And what do? We're going to give you the captaincy
Yeah.
the next season. It's just crazy. And the thing is, so they demote him to the third pair this season, which was the best available thing to do. But really, they didn't, because his time on ice was still upwards of 20 minutes a night. Whereas when it was Schneider on the third pair, he would only get maybe 15 minutes a night. So even that was a little bit misleading. So I think I fear like we might be stuck with him this year. I hope I'm wrong. I'm sure, you like to think Chris Drury will try to see what's out there. It's just, I think your best bet is to retain salary, and just hope that you have some of these GMs like, hey, we want this physical, like that just somehow buys into it. Maybe a Utah team that needs a veteran defenseman. Again, that's just me being optimistic. Like I said, I think that he might be here.
It's a difficult thing to kind of look ahead for, because I would also like him to not be on the team, but I would also like to move on from Ryan Lindgren. He had a miserable playoffs, and I understand, he's playing hurt and he's a very heart and soul kind of guy, but he's Dan Girardi. I understand he's a few years younger than he is, but this is essentially just Dan Girardi. When Ryan Lindgren is on the ice, the Rangers get caved in. They get caved in, and he doesn't know how to handle the puck at all. And I'm not saying he has to be an offensive star because you're playing with Adam Fox, but you shouldn't be handling the puck like it's a hot potato. You're in the NHL. You should know how to handle the puck and not be terrified of it whenever you have it on your stick. Ryan Lindgren is always hurt. He's always playing hurt too, which is going to shorten his career, and also how well he plays in this career. And so he's always hurt. I understand, he's giving up his body for the team. He's always those kinds of things I understand, and I wish Ryan Lindgren well, but he is not the first pairing defenseman that the Rangers need. Now, if the Rangers suddenly woke up and were like, okay, we're going to give this guy a 2-3 year contract, but we're going to slide him down and find a top pair defenseman to go with Adam Fox, whether that be Chikrin or insert name here or whoever you want. Like, pretend we're playing be a GM mode, trade for whoever you want, doesn't matter, insert name here. I would be on board with that. In a lesser role, in a more shut down defensive role, I could see Ryan Lindgren being way more effective in how he plays the game. But dealing with the other team's best players on every given night clearly has not worked well in his favor. It just hasn't. And the stats can tell you that. The eye test can tell you that, whether you're an analytics guy all the way or your analytics is ridiculous, give me the eye test all day. Whichever one you prefer, it tells you the same thing. Ryan Lindgren just isn't that good of a defenseman. And that's another thing that Nick and I try to hammer down on the show on Liberty Blue is we're here to be objective. We're not here to wave the pom-poms at anybody. We're not here to, if somebody has a good week, we're going to tell you that he had a good week, whether that be Trouba. Maybe Trouba has a good week, or maybe, whoever else has a good week. We will mention that on the show. But you have to erase the name and just objectively watch the way they play. Ryan Lindgren was not a good defenseman on the ice. Everything else is great. I'm sure the guys love him. I'm sure he's a great character. I'm sure all these things are fantastic. But can Ryan Lindgren play effective defense when he's on the ice with Adam Fox? We've seen it time and time again. The answer is no. And if you give him a long-term contract, I understand he's a few years younger, but this is just Dan Girardi all over again.
It is the perfect Dan Girardi comp. It really is, where he is a bit of a fan favorite. I mean, I guess it depends, but in terms of what he brings to the game, his, he is a bit of a warrior out there, and that's commendable, like you said. But I'm with you. This is an interesting decision for Chris Drury, and I have a bad feeling that he is going to get that like a 4-year deal worth more than what it should be. And I hope that Drury is able to kind of see exactly what you were saying and look like and hey, if you can slot him down, that would be fine.
Yeah.
No problem with that. I'm not saying, hey, you got to get rid of him. But if we found out that they did trade him, I mean, depending on, of course, what you get back, but that might be the right direction to go into. And I think that, like, the big thing, as much as when the Rangers have been eliminated, goal scoring has been the issue, I definitely think that they need a bit of a rehaul in terms of this defense. And like we mentioned, Trouba, Lindgren, just the role is too big. And I think if you took Adam Fox away from him, he'd be really, really exposed. And
I agree.
And then there's also, as far as like a Keandre Miller, obviously, I feel like the potential has always been sky high, but there's just so much inconsistency. Now his contract won't be up as far as, just restricted free agency, I believe, until after next season. But, that's something they have to consider too. They're not going to move him, obviously, but I think you want to see him take his game to another level. I feel like we haven't quite seen that. And I think he's better away from Jacob Trouba as well, but it'd be unfair for me to say, hey, like, it's all Trouba's fault, because Miller deserves some blame as well. And so it's going to be
3 separate head coaches, by the way, have tried Trouba and Miller, and it hasn't worked. 3 separate head coaches.
And didn't it seem like, in Laviolette, in terms of the quotes that we were hearing in training camp, it appeared as if they were going to consider maybe moving off of Lindgren Fox, maybe moving off of Miller Trouba, maybe moving off of Kreider Zibanejad. I think that's going to be so critical to kind of move away from some of those pairings that we're so accustomed to.
Well, the problem with moving away from Zibanejad Kreider is, okay, well, where were you going to put him? Because the second, I guess, the de facto first line of Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere has been the best line the Rangers have had all season and in the playoffs. So if you break up Kreider and Zibanejad, which I'm totally on board with, I'm all ears. But where are you going to put him? Because you have to put him then on the third line. Okay, if you want to put, let's say, Kreider on the third line, by all means. So who's going to be your second line winger? That's like, if Chris Drury goes out and acquires one, by all means, go ahead. But as currently constructed, that idea is all fine and dandy, but you cannot feasibly break up the best line the Rangers had. So if you want to break up Kreider Zibanejad, sure. Well, you got to find somebody to put somebody else there instead of one of those guys. And who on this team can fill that role? Right now, I don't know the answer to that question. So if you do want to break him up, okay, that's fine. Then go get somebody to fill that spot.
That's the tough thing, is internally, like there are players in Hartford, or even younger players on the roster that you'd love to fill the spot, but it's not easy. And something that I just thought of, and it's not something that I would really suggest, but just a thought in terms of that Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line, I wouldn't break it up. And I think the whole Lafreniere, Gallant made a big deal about, Lafreniere being on his off wing. Clearly that wasn't an issue. Could you maybe at some, I wouldn't do it. Could you go Lafreniere on Zibanejad's left side, and then have Kreider slide down as a third line left wing? I don't know if he meshes well with Hedl. That's also part of the issue.
Again, that's all fine and dandy. But okay, but then who's your second line winger?
Exactly right. And unfortunately, and that brings up the Capo Caco discussion, is like, you really wish that he could kind of take it and run, and it just hasn't quite happened. I still want to show some patience there, but look, like the number 2 pick that we hoped would happen, it's unlikely to happen. But I just wouldn't want to trade him pennies on the dial. I wouldn't want to sell low on him, and maybe he'd be more of a additional piece to a bigger deal. But yeah, that's a great question.
The issue with Kakko that we have to sit in as fans of the team is he's not going to be the second overall pick that the Rangers drafted him for. But you have to zoom out. Is he going to be the offensive dynamo that the fans thought he was going to be? No. But he's a really good defensive player. And that is something that a lot of people that are calling for Kakko to be traded are not understanding or don't want to understand. Yes, I would love for him to score more points. That's a given. I would like to see him do more offensively. Absolutely. 100%. I'm on board. He's a really good defensive player. And that third line of Cooley, Wenberg, and Kakko was a really good shutdown line in the playoffs. It was. So if you move on from Kakko, which I'm not here to, fight against or go one way or the other on, but you lose somebody that is one of the more reliable forwards in the defensive end. Again, if you trade him, by all means, if you find a trade that is going to make the team better, sure, but you still have to reckon with, okay, well, defensively, our forward line just got a little worse because he knew what to do without the puck, and that's a skill that not every forward has. So, yeah, I would love for him to score 60 points and, take that second line winger spot and run with it. I would love that. But he's still a good defensive forward, and trading him could cause an issue.
Yeah, I'm with you. If you in the right deal, sure. I'd prefer to stick with it. I mean, I know he's 2 years older now than what Lafreniere than when Lafreniere's age after last season. But all the talk was, hey, like people were saying maybe Lafreniere is a bust. Like it's a different situation, but like I think people still need to be a little bit patient. He is a young player, and I think that it would be. I'm kind of surprised that Kakko hasn't gotten more penalty kill time. I understand with the personnel, you do have a lot of players deserving of that. Obviously, they have one of the top units, but it'd be nice to somehow work him in at least like as a third duo somehow. Because, like you said, he's always. I mean, maybe not always. Year one was a little bit tough, but for a long time now, has been very defensively responsible, and you can't ignore that. And again, it's about shifting the thought. From the number 2 overall pick to just being a good hockey player. And, that Cooley, Wenberg, Kakko line, sure. Did it get the results offensively? No, but they really were good in terms of cycling the puck and just having possession of the puck. And that is, obviously really important. I think we'll close up shop there. But, definitely happy to continue this discussion as the offseason evolves. Where's the best place that we can follow you, Andrew?
So I'm at Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I will never call it X. I'm sorry. My co-host is at Nick Zararis, Nick Zararis. We are at Liberty Blue Pod, everywhere you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We live stream our episodes live every Monday at 6 p.m. on Twitch, on YouTube, on Twitter, etc. And after the episode, Nick will post the episode on YouTube, and I will take the audio and post it to Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. We do it every week, and yeah, it's We try to reckon with it with the whole Trouba thing. I try not to talk about it, too much. Otherwise, I just sound like a broken record. Same thing with Zibanejad. I'm over it. He went 30 games without a 5-on-5 goal in the regular season. He disappeared again in the conference finals. Couldn't do anything, and actually caused that turnover, that ridiculous turnover to lose the game for the Rangers.
I can't get it out of my head.
I'm over it, but that's the most movable contract in sports. He's making $8.5 million until 2030, and he has a full no move clause. Have fun with that. He's not going anywhere, and that's going to be one of the biggest issues the Rangers face. Is you can make the blue line better, you can find a good top 6 winger, you can do all these things, but when it comes down to it, Mika Zibanejad is a power play merchant. For the most part, he's good defensively. That's good. I'll give him that. Sure, he's a good defensive player, but your top line center has to be solid at 5-on-5 at the bare minimum. And guess what? He's not.
Andrew, pleasure having you on, and hope to continue this conversation as the offseason progresses.
Absolutely, appreciate you having me on.